Everybody say hi to Huggy. Well, hi Huggy. What's happening, everybody? A little bit early. Got 3 or 4 minutes till kick off. Big show. I'm very excited about it. I got a whole paragraph of notes from from other shows I want to jump out before the top of the hour. Throw out there. Technically, using my iPad to connect both Andrea and a guest is not working. I think it's because of the age of my iPad. So until I get the YouTube channel going and figure that out, it's just going to be me and a guest. Hopefully that's not going to be any more than 1 week. We'll see how that goes. But along those lines, a little shout out to our friends that use YouTube. Like the San Antonio Jets. I know I listened to the Jet Life podcast. Frank Porter, follow him and his Indie Edge stuff. So if any of you, somebody outside of them, anybody that's familiar, that's totally blind and knows the the accessibility, shortcuts, all that stuff. If you're willing to take a little bit of time and go through that stuff with me, I'd appreciate it. It'd be better for the show. I don't think I'm going to be able to get multiple people on at any point until we reach that point, reach that goal. So if anybody's willing to help out, I would certainly appreciate it. Going back to Mikey's workout that I've been encouraging people to do, I want to report. I told you guys I'm going to stay with it with you guys, even though I'm not planning on playing. Today was the first time I went through the circuit 2 times. Did the workout 3 times this week, and now that I've done the circuit twice, that will be what I do every other day, is go through it 2 times till I build up to a 3rd time. So I'm challenging you people, get out there. And also I want to make sure, especially for those of you that are a little bit new to working out, that you're doing it right. Doing the things like the push-ups, you don't want to be going so high up that you're locking out your elbows and coming down, bouncing off the ground. You want it to be a smooth effort, up, down, no bouncing, no resting on the ground, no resting at the top, just smooth motion, up and down, and do that with everything. The squats, when you're doing the side lunges, make sure you're counting them right. When he says to do 10 of them, that's right, left, 1. Right, left, 2. Not right, 1, 2, left, 2, right, 3, left, 4. A full count is doing both the right and the left leg. And that goes with all the stuff he has. The arm circles, 10 forward, 10 backwards, the neck rolls, 5 each way. And honestly, I thought Mikey was being soft on you to give you 10 jumping jacks. Man, I've been doing 30. So I challenge you players to jump in there and do that with me. Also, Davy Smoke, as I call you, you reached out to me and asked me to email the workouts to you, and I sent a private message to Terry saying I need a current email for you. So if you still want those workouts, I need an email for you. Reach out to me, neildog@gmail.com. And then Booker, I'll finish up with you. I was calling you Shutout, told Jared how I had a nickname of Shutout for you. And you called me the next day, making it clear you don't remember the dog shutting you out. The honest to God truth, I don't remember if it was us or somebody else. I just remember calling you Shutout. I remember in 2004 specifically calling you Shutout, is just ribbing you, giving you a hard time, talking trash. But I couldn't tell you. I know the Dogs threw a few shutouts. I think our first one ever was against the Fast Star Comets when they were getting started before they were Chicago. But I know the Dogs have had a couple shutouts, and I knew I called you shutout. So if I did it because you shut somebody else, or you got shut out by somebody else, I was just being a jerk. But either way, I was being a jerk. So those are all my pregame notes.
5:01 p.m.
Oh, and I'm a minute late. I gotta cue the music because we got a big show! Oh! Yeah! Welcome back, baby. This is, I believe, week 4 of the Beepball Blues show. We are still going. We're rocking. I appreciate all the positive feedback that has come back from folks. Seems like everybody's been enjoying it so far. So let's keep this thing going. I am your 2000 offensive MVP and the 5-time world champion, Neil McGet-It-Dunner. And tonight, on the other end of my darkness, I am joined by one of my longest, closest brothers in life, the first Beepball player ever to hit a home run over the 180-foot line before you little pansies were playing with the 170-foot line. The first person ever in beep baseball to hit a ball over the 180-foot line in a World Series game against the defending champion, Albuquerque True Sight, Seth Bam Bam Clark. Welcome to the Beepball Blues show, Bam Bam.
Yay! Devil Dog with Avenue. Bam Bam and Devil Dog. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Actually, I had Devil Dog on the back of my jersey for.
I was going to say, you had Devil Dog on the back of your jersey forever, so right. I just kind of fell into that. But what's going on?
Today, I just counted it up, and today is day 44 of my hibernation. I mean, I've gone out, I've done some walking. Nobody has been in my house but me since March 6th. Today is 44 days in. And yesterday, on the 43rd day, I had my first ever social distancing visit. And that came from you and your family, man.
Yeah, right. Well, we've gotten kind of some experience in the social distancing visits, going and visiting my parents and my brothers and stuff like that. So Neil Dog needs to see the kids, man. You have to reach out to the shut-in population and during this time of tragedy and and coming together as a nation. So I was like, man, I need to go see my boy, man. So.
You know what I thought was funny because, ahead of time, and, a lot of it was you guys just getting out of the house and giving the kids something different to look forward to. But, man, you were here for about an hour, and I would say like half of that was you and I talking about doing tonight's show.
Yeah, right.
Trajan, though, I got to be proud of Trajan, man. He stood right in there like he was taking in some real knowledge.
Trajan always isn't too far away, man. I mean, especially, I think Beepball. I mean, Trajan's always right there, like within 5 feet of me, except like last year when I was on the bench and he was out there spotting.
Oh, what a change that must have been for you.
Yeah, right? Like, okay, I can handle it. Keep the bench for the starters. You gotta be water. But.
All right, before we dive in, there's a couple things I want to say. A couple things I want to do. First, I want to put it out there to the audience that, I don't really want to do, if we could keep this thing going and there's enough interest, I don't want to just do one show on each thing because, the show is going to have a very short lifespan if that's what we're doing. Jared doesn't have to be the only pitcher that came on the show. Tonight doesn't have to be the only night that we talk about defense. I actually am reversing. I said in the first show that I wasn't going to do much with hitting other than encouraging people to swing their bat because I don't want to, I'm not qualified to coach mechanics when it comes to hitting. But a few people started reaching out, talking about, people that can give players good ideas on hitting. So
I can coach hitting mechanics.
Well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Maybe somewhere down the road.
I don't mean to interrupt you. My nickname is Bam Bam. I did learn how to swing at some point. Not early on, but I did learn eventually.
So I guess more than anything, I'm just saying I'm flexible. If you guys have ideas you want for the show, reach out. Because, if there's something for teams, players to benefit from, let's do it. And again, Jared doesn't have to be the only pitcher. Even though Seth and I are going to attack a lot about defense tonight, I know there are other people that will feel just as strongly about other things, other aspects of spotting, playing defense. And you're welcome to come on here and have a voice also. So tonight, I said at one point in one of the shows that I might even just handle the defensive stuff myself because on the first time around, because I feel very strongly about defense, and there's a lot that I could throw out there. And I know from 30 years of bouncing defensive stuff off him that Seth and I both feel passionately about it. You guys might sit back and think, what, these two clowns are going to talk about defensive spotting, but, give it a listen first and then judge it, because it's something that we're both very passionate about. I mean,
and I mean, as it relates to defense, it comes like from our history. Most people, I mean, a lot of people, I should say, out there don't even realize that I was part of the Dogs. I'm a Heat player now, right?
I know, it's crazy, but you've been with the Heat for like 12 years, dude. That's almost as long as you were with the Dogs.
Well, not exactly. But my career, it's blown me away how long I've been with the Heat. And most people know me now as a Heat player. But I came up with the Dogs. I actually came up with the name West Coast Dawgs. But we never had any offense, and so we had to, even though we had people who could hit, Eric Dragos, Mike Finn, we had people who could hit. We just never had a pitcher who could take advantage of that.
Plus, we never had a pitcher that stayed with us for a long period of time.
That's true.
I mean, when we started the Dogs, we had Henry, who, we had a great young core. Danny, Eric, Mike, Roger, you and I. We were set for a solid core, and we thought we were set at pitcher with Henry. We would all grow together, and that lasted 2 years before his career path took him another, direction. And then we were bouncing between people for a while. And, eventually even settled on Tim. We settled on Hall of Fame Tim Hibner. But, we had a hard time getting a regular, somebody. We never had a Kevin or a Jared or somebody that was with the team.
Yeah, I was like, man,
Fonzie, exactly.
I'm like, if I would have hit off you my whole life, Fonzie, I'd be a Hall of Famer, man. But the reality was, we didn't have that, and so as a consequence, all we did was focus on defense. And I think that Dogs defense, team-wise, was like the best defense ever to play the game. So, I mean, that's where we both come from, defense, because we'd go out and practice, and we'd come back to your house or wherever we were and talk about defense for the next 3 or 4 hours. And so it was a total focus of the Dogs. So we, where even I, who am, more of a power hitter, I'm not a good defensive player. I'm an average defensive player. I worked hard to make myself an average defensive player. You, Neil, of course, are one of the great short men ever to play the game. But as far as like designing it and conceptualizing, defense, I consider myself to be a tactician. So a lot of that went into what we did as the Dogs, and then you guys as the players made it all happen. So
well, we're going to go through what all of that was. But before we do, who's Bam Bam?
Oh,
who's Bam Bam? How do you become Bam Bam? How do you get from there to here?
Bam Bam is, my personality, nickname. All the people in the old days know me for, being a power hitter and a personality, right? I was the most hated person in Beepball for many, many, many years, followed by you. Other people, took the mantle even above you. But Bam Bam was always one of those people. But I've been playing Beepball my entire life. I started when I was 15 in '88. Was at last year's World Series. I got to do something though, because I'm sure he's listening. Darnell Booker, right? In my time of playing Beepball, right? I've seen a lot of it. I'm not a great player, as I've said, but I have played with great players. If you are a great player who has played in the last 30 years, I have either played against you or played against you on Friday or Saturday. So I was thinking about it earlier. My first tournament on Saturday. I played against the opposing pitcher, Ray Cerna. My last time on a Saturday 2 years ago, I played against Jarrett Woodard. Right, that spans the scope of beepball history. But I've pointed out that there have been 4 dynasties in beepball: Albuquerque, Austin, the Dogs, and Taiwan. And I have to say there are officially 5 beepball dynasties. The Indy Thunder, Booker, you've done a great job, and you are a dynasty. I have to bow my head to that.
You made Booker proud when you told him that. I know. After I did the first show, the opening show, the Beepball Blues show.
Yeah.
Booker was my first, second, third, and fourth call to volunteer to come on the show. That guy tried to call me, like, he tried to FaceTime live or video, like a Facebook video call at like 5:30 in the morning.
Right. Booker is nothing if not persistent.
he brought up the fact that you gave him the nod for having coached to a dynasty.
Yeah, no, he deserves it. We talked about it after the championship game last year. I was like, you deserve it, Booker. I can't take that away from you. So, I mean, but basically, I've been playing beepball forever, Neil Dog. Following in your footsteps, riding off the coattails of great players, and I guess at this point I'm retired, but that's how I've gotten from here to there. In between, I've had 3 kids. I've almost become a doctor now, and life has moved on. But beepball is still here. So.
All right. First thing we're going to talk about is defensive formations, and a lot of our reference points, I think, are going to end up coming from what the Dogs did and why. So I think it'd be important to lay out our zone, the way we had the field zoned, and where we had players, so that there's a reference point, to go from when we talk about other formations and why we did this. So the Dogs used just the 5 numbers. We never used 6. 1 was straight up the middle for us. For the majority of the time, can
I just stop you on one thing as you're talking about that?
Right.
Just remember that we use 2 spotters too. So the field is divided. For anybody who's not really familiar, right? We're talking about a field that's divided through the catcher, through the pitcher, all the way out through center field. The right side of the field, 1 spotter controls. The left side of the field, the other spotter controls. So Neil says 1. There are actually 2 1 zones.
Well, there are 2 spotters that can call 1. There's only one zone.
Right. There's a right field 1 zone and a left field 1 zone. They're just next to each other. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I know what you're trying to say. I don't agree with that. I say there's still just 1 zone.
It's funny because I had this discussion with JC. But as I pointed out to JC, I said, so if the ball was hit to the left field side of that middle line in 1, that's not the numbers we used, and Trajan playing right field was the one who called it, is that proper? And he said, no, the left field person should call it. So, when you think of the 1 zones, like when I'm talking about defense, you'll hear me talking about the right field 1 and the left field 1.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, that's good. Everybody understands, and I understand that concept. I mean, I don't know that my mind would ever shift to thinking that way, but I mean, in the end, it's semantics. You know what I mean? We're still going to call that ball a 1, no matter whether we consider it a left 1 or just a 1, or you know what I mean. Right, so. But Seth is right. I was thinking about this earlier when I was thinking about the show, because we go back to an era where teams didn't have 2 spotters. But I don't know I don't know if that exists anymore. Maybe it does, but I don't know that there's any teams that play with just 1 spotter anymore. But Seth is right. So straight up the middle was one, and then on each side of the field it went from 2 to 5, with five, five being right down the right field line and a 5 being right down the left field line. The way we set up our 6 players is the spot I played up front. Most of the time I played straight up the middle at about 70 to 75 feet. In that position, no matter who played it, was responsible for everything up front, from sideline to sideline and up to the 40-foot line. All of what I would call the garbage ball. I called myself a garbage man and an air traffic controller, because I was responsible for picking up all the garbage that nobody should score on and calling out signals to all the people behind me. That was where the air traffic control comes in. So then on the right field side, we had a player in the 3 zone at about 85 feet, sometimes 90. And we had a player in the 2 zone just off of center field that was the deepest person on the right field side, probably, 115, 120. Somewhere in that range. I might not have those depths exactly right.
Probably deeper. Most of those are probably like 25 feet deep, 20 feet, because when we first started, the bases were at 90, then they went to 100, and so the people were deeper. Sometimes that 3 person played lined up with the base or a little bit behind, and again, it depends on what team you're playing. Right? If you're playing a weak hitting team, or a hard hitting team, you can just push them back.
The 3 on the right field side was always on the inside of the base a little, because Eric played the 3 on the left field side, and we never had him. He didn't like playing behind the base, but it wasn't really smart to have him behind the base. I didn't think so. Eric always played right about 95 feet, just inside the base. So the 3 on the other side, because they both, and we always had people who were fast in both those spots, they both would be running to the middle. And so having that, they couldn't both be at 95 feet. They had to be staggered a little bit. So I would actually say that right field 2 probably was more like 125, because we also had a 2 on the left field side. That's where Mike Finn played most of his career. Might even play there for Austin. I'm not sure. And that spot was more like 115. And then our deep left fielder would play 4, sometimes like a 3-4, a little bit more off the line.
Most of they blend above a dead 3 too.
So and that player was our deepest player at like 140. So and I'll turn it over to you here shortly, because I don't want to cover all of it. Our basic dog theory was, with playing that defense, and anybody that's taken note, is we left right field completely open. And our basic theory, most of the batters were right-handed and hit to left field. So we weren't going to spread the field. You can't cover an entire beepball field with 6 players. It's impossible to do. If a 7th player ever comes in, that's going to change. But right now, you just can't do it with 6 players. Seth will cover in less in a minute. So we gave up right field. We'll talk more later about how we would adjust to things if we had to. But we, as a team, gave up deep right field. Our 3 on the right field side had the freedom to turn and run backwards down the line, and we had players like Roger and Tanner Gears playing over there, players with speed. Who could? No, not Tanner. I'm sorry, Chase. God, how did I do that?
I'm like, man, I left the dog.
I'm still saying his name wrong. Not even Chance Cranford. God, where did I get Tanner Gears? I'm sorry. I'm glad you caught me. If I was by myself, I never even would have caught that. So Chance Cranford later played over there for us, another player with a lot of speed. And then in the deep right field spot for many years, we had Lex Gillette, who's a world-class runner. So we had players on the right field side with speed that could make up for anybody that managed to beat us over there. But for the most part, that was our standard defense, because we wanted to plug up left field, center and left field, where the ball went the majority of the time, as best we could. We wanted to have on every one of those balls no less than 3 and as many as 4 people lining up on every ball. A kind of a domino effect. Front, boom, next layer, boom, next layer, boom. And it just closed up real nicely like a zipper when a ball went through that area.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a couple other things like basic to that defense is we decided we took a guess, like where are the most balls going to be hit, right? And the most balls are going to be hit dead 3, probably, on your way to a championship, probably 100 feet, right? So we put somebody there. We put Eric right there. So most of those balls would roll right there to that 3 spot.
The dead zone. The place you did not want it, the abyss.
Exactly, right? That's the most common place for a ball to be hit. So we put somebody right there. We also, on the other side, right? Because imagine...
Not just somebody, though. Not just somebody, though. Our best player had to go there.
Right, because you have to pick up those balls. You can't let a 110-foot roller score, right? One of our theories as the Dogs was get all the balls you can get. So we wanted to field the balls that were on the ground and the balls that just were not crushed, right? If you crushed the ball, fine, who cares, right? Nothing we could do about that. But if you put the ball on the ground, and if you didn't, it wasn't a screaming line drive, we wanted to stack up players within a zone with the knowledge that we would knock the ball down. Somebody will knock the ball down before it gets all the way out. But we built that defense with the idea in mind. Where do the balls go most? Right? Where do they go most? And put people there. That was the other part of this defense. It put more people on what I call the strong side, the side of the field where the batter is going to hit, so left field for a right-handed hitter, than it did on the weak side. And like Neil said, it gives up the deep lines, but it's a trade-off for if the batter is going to hit to where their power is or to where their normal strength is, we're going to have at least 4 people in line to get that ball, and it made it extremely difficult to actually play. So our communication was based on depth, right? When the ball went from one depth to the next depth, we needed to communicate to each other that fact so we knew that the deeper person now had responsibility for the ball. So it was all kind of built together. And then one of the things we went to when we really started winning our championships in '99, we went to shifting. So we would scout and then put in an extreme shift. So we would shift more people to the strong side of the field. We had an extreme shift where we had 5 people on the strong side of the field and 1 person on the weak side, again with the theory also being that if you go to the weak side, the ball's probably not going to be hit as hard as if you hit it to your strength on the strong side. So we would flip. If a left-handed hitter came up, we would flip, right? We would go. Eric would go from the third base side to the first base side, and the defense was also put together that if from a standing set, if we did it in waves, the players could shift themselves without the help of the spotters, which was important because when we were doing as many shifts as we were, you wanted to be the players to be able to start the shifts and have the spotters line us up.
Right, define
afterwards.
It or, right. Clean it up.
Exactly. You can't be delaying while you're doing shifts. You know what I'm saying? People aren't with that. If you're going to shift, you need to get into your shift and be set.
It's funny. I have our playbooks. That's what I have that under. A little bit further down the page or whatever.
Right, sorry.
But no. It's good. I mean, we're going to dive right. It was among the next things in there. But just to further explain, in the NBA, Anybody that follows a basketball team, you hear them talk about doing walkthroughs. Really, even in football, they do walkthroughs the day before a game. We did walkthroughs over and over on our shifts, simply just going from our normal standard position into into the shift or whatever, and we did it, like Seth said, by communicating to each other. So when we did a right field shift, which we did every time, Frank Fazio and batters like him, big left-handers that aren't just left-handed hitters, but strong left-handed hitters, we did our right field shift. And so I was always the weak side person. We put 5 players on the strong side, because we also had a left field shift, which our standard defense was our standard
defense has shifted. I would call this a 1-point unbalanced defense because there's more people on the strong side of the field.
Right.
And if we would go to the left, if there was a left-handed batter, we would just automatically flip our base defense. But at times, if it was like a Frank Fazio, we would go into a right field shift off of our base defense also. So
right. So like our base defense shaded to the left. And then we also, not that we used it a lot, but we did have a straight left field shift. So when we did our right field shift, and again, we would put 5 players on the strong side, and I would be the only person on the right side. The first move was Eric calling me to his spot, since he played straightaway 3 on the left field side. He called me to his spot, and then Roger, who played the 3 on the right field side, called Eric to him, and then Roger shifted back. He didn't have anybody to go to, but he would shift a little bit further back on the first base line in the 4 or 5 zone, probably just straight away 5, I'm guessing, since we had 5 players over there. But I mean, the whole thing.
Just as a reminder, we're talking about the Dogs calling formation where it's 1 in the middle, 5 on the lines.
Right.
I did that for years with the Dogs, and then the Heat switched when John Parker came over, and we switched the numbering system.
Right.
So it's 1 on the line, 5 down the middle,
right.
And it's always been very difficult for me to get. And so I imagine people listening to you are making that mental switch in their head also. But,
and I am trying to do say right field and left field to keep it going, and that's why I wanted to start with how we laid things out, because that's just how my mind thinks. You know what I mean? But I played a year with Oklahoma, and they did the 6 up the middle. So you know what I mean. I also had to. I've had to make that shift also. So I totally understand.
It's hard, man. You wouldn't think it would be hard, man. But it is hard.
So it's real important that with all of that stuff, any time that you're doing shifts, you guys, a team, the entire team, the spotters and the players have to be working together and on the same page on what you're doing. And how we got to this point, it started out in '96, technically. We got beaten bad by Austin. I mean, bad. I think we opened the tournament against Austin. We came into the tournament because we'd finished 3rd the year before in '95. That was our second year as the Dogs. And then in '96, we opened the tournament playing in the round robin against Austin, and I think they put a 20 spot on us in the first inning.
No, they scored 21 runs on us before we recorded our first out.
Oh.
When they got up we put them out in the inning with 24 runs on the board. Something we never thought would happen.
It was ugly. I mean, now, part of that was the fields. Yes. Outside of like 2006 in Cleveland, which unfortunately you spent all the time in the hospital and didn't get to play on those concrete fields. Outside of 2006, 1996 is the next rival for the worst fields ever at a World Series.
And just because I know you weren't there, 2012 in Rochester, New York. No, it wasn't 2012. 2013. Last time we were at Rochester, New York. 2015.
15.
It was horrible.
Okay.
It was horrible. Those are just bad fields. But go ahead.
So the '96 tournament, the '96 tournament was tailor made for a team with a good pitcher because all of the games were very high scoring. And that was the year, our first year with Brian Doris, and like he had no experience at a World Series, and we got worked pretty good. We made the championship round, but I think we finished like fifth.
I hate to go back memory lane, but because I think that the Rochester, New York tournament for the Heat had a correlation with that tournament in '96. In '96, we get 12-run. Catch up and get 12.
Caught up and got 12 run again. Yes, we are absolutely right.
That happened to us in Taiwan against Taiwan in Rochester. Yeah, very embarrassing. Very embarrassing.
Spent about 3 innings fighting back, tied them up. You know what though? I actually don't think that was that game. I think that happened in '98.
No, we went to the championship.
I know, but our first loss in the championship round also was to Austin. I don't know. I might be mixing up. You know who we'd have to ask is John Pop. John Bancroft has every game that the Dogs played straight in his head, so we might be mixing up. But the bottom line is, yes, we got 12 run. We spent 3-4 innings fighting back. And the first inning back on the field, we got 12 run again. So, it was ugly. So in that '96 tournament, I remember the first one bringing it up to our coach. I realized that with Kevin being able to spread the ball, our leaving right field open was just a doorway for Kevin. He spent the whole game just attacking me and Roger on the right side. We just didn't have enough help to stop it. So we started out by doing what we called our Austin defense, which is we just spread it out more. I moved over to a 3 on the right field side, basically playing straightaway right field, straightaway right field. Roger moved closer to the first base line. Whoever we had in deep right field at the time moved a little. You know what I mean? We spread the field out a little more, which evolved into going into the '97 season. Don Robinson, Seth and I all spent a weekend at Eric's house, Eric Mazariegos, and we spent the weekend coming up basically with a playbook. And that's when we came up with our right field shift, the left field shift. I think we even had like a center field, like for anybody that could.
We did. Yeah. It was a W. It was a condensed W.
I don't remember us ever really using it.
Nope, we didn't.
but we spent the time and we came up with it, and so we ended up with a 7-page playbook going into the '97 season. When we did this was probably February, and we had a team meeting in March where we introduced a playbook. I mean, after we spent the weekend coming up with what we were going to do, I believe you and Don sat down and put it on paper, and then Christina, your better half, did the diagrams, I think.
We all wrote it on. We put it on computer,
Yeah, so we had this 7-page playbook, and we bring it to the team, and our spotters look at this 7-page thing and like, we're not going to do it. You guys can't do all this moving around. This isn't going to work. There's too many moving pieces. The umpires aren't going to let us take 5 minutes before every batter. It's like the spotters, Chris and Mark. Chris Hunsucker and Mark Masterson. The first 2 spotters to go in the Hall of Fame just threw their playbooks down and walked out at one point. We didn't even know they walked out. They went out in my backyard. The meeting was right here in the room I'm in. And at some point, somebody asked one of them a question, and Roger's like, "Oh, sorry, guys. They walked out about 10 minutes ago." They didn't even sit through the whole meeting. So now fast forward to the World Series. We end up finishing third. We lost a tough 7-inning game to Austin. It was the undefeated game. The winner went into the championship game as the undefeated team. We lost a 1-run 7-inning game to Austin, and then we got beat pretty good by the Wichita Sonics in the next game, like 15-8. So they went on and played Austin, but we won the Spotter Award again. I think that was probably only the second of our many times winning the Spotter Award. But after the game when we got knocked out by Wichita, Janet Leonard and Annie, I can't remember her last name, Annie Moss, I think might be her last name. I almost brought her up when you were talking about me being called Devil Dog, because she couldn't see my jersey well at one point. She thought it said Dirty Dog. She's like, why are you so proud to be Dirty Dog? I'm like, oh, no, I'm Devil Dog. Anyways, that was the 2 spotters for the Wichita team, and they played Austin in the championship, so they were a great team. They were went over to Chris and Mark, our 2 spotters, patting them on the back, talking about how great our shifts were, how professional we looked, moving from spot to spot. What a great job they did getting us ready for the tournament, doing these shifts, and those clowns just sat there going, oh, thanks, yeah, we worked really hard on that. The 2 idiots that walked out of my house saying we can't do that took all the credit for those shifts and for that playbook that we came with. And I say that with love. I mean, I've been friends with Hunsucker longer than I've known Seth, and Mark Masterson's one of my closest friends in life. But man, they let us down in that meeting, and then they took all the credit for the work our shifts did.
And they're in the Hall of Fame. I can't even sniff the Hall of Fame.
That makes 2 of us. Technically, I can more than sniff it, but I don't imagine I'm ever going to be in it.
You can make an argument.
What's that?
No, I said you can at least make an argument. You could at least make an argument.
Technically, I'm qualified because they have I made the all-tourney team 4 times. And they have that clause where if you have like 2 all-tournament trophies or whatever, from like regional tournaments, which we never went to a regional tournament, but we had a full-on league in the late 80s and early 90s. And I made the all-star teams for the league. I was MVP of the league one year, I think. So, I mean, I don't, they would be discriminating by saying those don't qualify the same way those regional things do. You know what I mean? Because really it's a matter of cost of travel that they'd be saying made me, not qualify. But in the end, that's neither here nor there. So this does lead into the spotting. Although, did you want to touch on, because I talked about how we did our Austin like spread or whatever, which I think is similar to what teams do now. And I know you had thoughts on that. Like
it's kind of similar. One thing people would be like, "Hey, why the hell are they spending all this time talking about formations?"
Because it's important.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's totally important. And one of the biggest things, or one of the biggest problems I see, and it kind of leads me to have like a negative opinion on teams actually dethroning the Indy Thunder, is everybody runs basically exactly what the Indy Thunder run, right? They do the same thing that the Indy Thunder run, right? It's a 2-point, so 2 short men, balanced defense. Same number of people on each side. Mm-hmm. But my thought is this, right? The Thunder has the best talent, right? They've won 4 championships in a row. How possibly, unless you have their talent and you have their experience, how possibly by running exactly what they do you expect to beat them? Right? How does that work? You cannot imitate somebody and expect to beat them unless you have better talent than they do. So I think I watched the league just copycat the Thunder, and I just laughed. It's like, man, it's perfect for the Thunder. People are doing their work for them. So
but to break that down,
go ahead.
Well, to break it down to where people know more what you're saying, because I know when we talked about it yesterday, you more specifically talked about how they've got a great athlete at each position.
Right.
That's what makes it possible for them to cover more ground.
Right. I mean, and it is right. So And one thing, like, we didn't talk about, I mean, we kind of hit on it, and I'll just, emphasize it. Within the dog defense, most of the people are playing side to side, right? So most of, the defenders, most of their responsibilities are side to side, and that's why we could come together in like a straight line within a zone, right? One player would be behind the other player behind the other player. And so, the formation went with the style of play that we were actually playing. We were trying to stack people up within a zone, and we taught players to play side to side and fit themselves within the zone. The other big thing with that is people, at no point in our defenses, outside of the 2-3s meeting at a 1, a dead middle 1, we got around that by staggering the depths of the threes. There was no place that anybody on our defense crossed, right? Nobody, there were no crossing lines, and so everybody could play aggressive because they knew they weren't going to run into anybody, right? So the defense, that the Thunder defense, which the Taiwan defense, which is the Kansas defense, again, I've played in it the last 4 or 5 years, ever since John Parker came over to the Heat. I've tried to understand it as best as I can, and I believe I have a pretty good grasp of it, and I really just don't like it. Like I said, it's balanced, and it has 2 short players. So we put, and there are, I would assume, variations just within the perhaps the depth and just like slight positioning, like the Dogs did. Sometimes it's a 3, sometimes it's a 4. But so one side basically in these defenses look like the other side. So you line up a person. I had to go check this with my spotter son Trajan. The short person is lined up on the 2-3 line about 80, 85 feet. All right. There is, okay, let me stop. Using the Dogs formation, using the Dogs calling system, so 5 on the line, 1 in the middle.
Right.
I actually mean that person is on the 4-3 line. That short person is standing on the 4-3 line about 80, 85 feet. The next person in depth is generally standing in the 1 about 125 feet. I believe they call that the rover, not totally sure. And then the deepest player comes back over to the 3, shaded perhaps to the 3-4 line. Again, it's, kind of your flavor, about 160 or 165, right? Mm-hmm. Really deep. And it's the same on the, so I was describing, let's say, the left field. It's the same on the right field, except the person in 1 on the right field is closer to home plate than the person in the left field. So that's the basic formation. Now, it makes sense, right? Like you were talking, Neil, about Kevin being able to go either way, right? More pitchers have been able to go either way the longer Beepball has gone on, so I get the allure of presenting the pitcher with a balanced defense at the while they're pitching, right? They can't go to one side or the other, right. Just based on the formation. Right. Whereas somebody against the Dogs might try to go to our weak side. Yeah. What this causes the players to have to do, though, right? This, if you notice, there are a lot of large spaces in this defense. This is why you need very athletic, very good, very great hearing, great ability to gobble up space. You need players like that at all 6 positions because they have so much ground to cover. Mm-hmm. So you can look at, let's look at the left field side. That player on the short player standing on the 3-4 line. They are about 80, 85 feet, but they are responsible for 40-foot ones, twos, threes, fours, and fives. Right? So they have that over a 40-foot. I believe it's like 62 feet. I believe they have to run 62 feet to get to that a 41-foot one on their side. But they also have the responsibility, obviously, of playing side to side, but they also have to go backwards, right? So if a ball is hit down the line right to the base at, let's say, 100 feet down that 5 line, that short player at 80, 85 feet has to angle backwards and to their right to get it. At the same time, the rover, who's on that side of the field, has to cover, if they're going to get to, say, that 5, has to cross over 3 different zones. And at the same time, that deep player at 3 has to angle up and go forward. So these are kind of the responsibilities that each side has. That rover always has to cut across sideways to the base. That's the one standing, the person standing 125 feet in the one. They're a side-to-side, kind of a side-to-side player. And then that deep player, as I just explained, needs to come up to their right, but also play all the deep balls, go backwards and forward, backwards to their left, backwards to their right. So 4 of the 6 players on the field I want to call it the snap. I'm a football guy. At the pitch, have to either run forward to the right, or have the responsibility of covering balls forward to the right, forward to their left, or backwards and angled, right? So it's all about angles. Everybody is always on angles. As where the Dogs were side to side, most people in these defenses are running angles. Whereas communication for the Dogs was to show where the depth of the ball was and to give responsibility to the deeper player. Communication here is really used to prevent collisions, right? Because let's say it's a 3, dead in the middle, a 105-foot 3 on the left field side. The short player is angling back to their left. The back player is coming up, and the rover, the guy standing in the one, is coming to the right. So if you draw those lines out, they all cross, right? So you have to communicate here in this defense. It's not that it can't be done. You just have to be very athletic, again, because of the great spaces. And then this also brings in what you were talking about, the spotter. The dog spotters, all we had was a drag call, right? We had one drag call just to indicate short balls.
We didn't even really encourage our spotters to do it a lot because they weren't that accurate at doing it.
Exactly. So, you're exactly. You would know better than I would on that because you were that guy. And so that was it, right? But this Thunder defense calls for the spotters to be far more active since there's such space to cover. Now, just going way back into the old days of Beepball, spotters used to tell players, hey, I'll call the number, you run to the number I call, and you fall down and field the ball, right? That's what I was taught when I first came in. The Dogs changed that, right? Our philosophy was the players use the spotter as a guide, not as your number one be-all to end-all. Start slow and end fast. Now with the Thunder defense, it puts the onus back on the spotter, and they use all these different calls, drag calls, squeak calls, whistled calls, all sorts of stuff to activate the player they are calling right away. Right, it's a drag call, it's a squeak call before you know, depending on what player you are, where exactly you need to run to field that ball. So if your spotters aren't up to par with this defense, the defense falls down because the players cannot react as fast if their spotters are not spotting that quickly.
But that's another area too where it comes into it'd be difficult for like less experienced teams to try to emulate it because for one there's no way their spotters are going to have that kind of experience and be ready for that. And then the thing we've already talked about is like if you don't have six athletes that can cover ground confidently.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're just never going to be you're never going to be successful at it. You could try it. There's nothing wrong with trying anything. But I feel like with any defense, and this kind of goes in, as the next thing I had up was like spotting, but it really, I'm not going to sit here and tell people how to spot. I'd love to have a spotter come on the show. So if people have recommendations or there's spotters that are interested in coming on and giving your side of it, I'd love to have a spotter or two on the show or more than that, whatever. But for me, what I wanted to touch on it really is more communication, not between the players and the spotters, between the players also. But I mean, we like you said, we came to my house or Eric's house. Those are the two primary places we practice out of. And after practice, we'd sit around and talk about stuff, talk about what was working, what wasn't working, what we should try to make it work better. Like we might not have always agreed, like you and I didn't always agree, we didn't agree with the spotters, they didn't agree with us. But in the end, we always hammered it out and went to the field with a plan and executed the plan.
Right.
Our players like when you're talking about spotters saying to just go to the spot or whatever, back in the day, like the Dave Horn like type spotters or whatever. It's like, just trust me, just go where I call or whatever. Don't use your ears, just trust me. But in the end, like, it was just we practiced without spotters at times just to train our ears. You can't just depend on the spotters. But even when our spotters made bad calls, like with me playing up front, I would be the one who would be most likely taken out of the play. If you know what I mean? If it's I'm running to the wrong spot right out of the gate, but it was never my job to just quit and think, dang, they called the wrong call. I had to let you guys know behind me where, you know what I mean, what the change was or what really happened. So like it was so important on every level for the players and the spotters to be on the same thing. I remember DB brought up a conversation like a year ago in Beepball Nation, asking what people thought it took to be like an ultimate defense. And it's like, man, I've been around both where they had the players to be a good defense, but they weren't working good with the spotters, or they had good spotters that weren't working good with the players or whatever. And if you're not on the same page, you're not going to go anywhere with defense. We were always on the same page. Whether we agreed on everything in the meeting or not, we took the field with a plan. And we you know what I mean? We communicated that plan. Everybody was on the same page. And everybody has to be on the same page.
Right. No, they're a team, it's a team defense sort of thing. And we all have to, seamlessly work with each other, right? Understand, again, I've seen people get down on spotters and stuff. I've never really gotten on, if that's not my thing, but because I do think ultimately it's back on the player, right? You got to pick the ball up. And I've missed a lot, I've missed balls in my life, clearly, and I don't need anybody, outside of my coach riding my butt for it. So the spotters are the same way. They're going to make mistakes, and it's all good. But everybody, the spotting has to match up to the defensive philosophy that you're running, and everybody has to buy into that defensive philosophy and go with it from there. So
it's
it has to work like on a seamless level, else you will get these these little battles. And I don't care how talented of a beepball team you are, the more battles you have on the sideline, on the field, the less chances you have to win a World Series. I mean, that's just a fact. Yeah. I've seen that before in my life.
No, you're absolutely right. We played it. I mean that we the first team we ever played on was the Blaze, and I've said it before, and it's been talked about in Beepball Nation. One of the most talented teams, if not the most talented team, to not win a championship, and that was because in the end the whole team wasn't on the same page from beginning to end. And it would kill us. You know what I mean? We would finish high, second, third, well, not second, third, fourth, fifth, but we couldn't get over the hump because the entire team wasn't on the same page. When we started the Dogs, our number one goal was to have a group of people that would always be on the same page. Anybody that wasn't going to be on our page wasn't going to play with us. It was really that simple. We wanted to win a championship. It started with you, Eric, Don, and I. We had some other people around us, Mike and Roger and Henry, but it was the four of us, and we wanted a championship, and we weren't going to put up with nonsense to not get our championship, and that's the advice I have for teams. Like, once you decide what you're going to do, once you decide what's your best defense, what's your best spotting system, stick to it. Don't let some outsider come in and tell you to do something different. The majority of beepball teams use that 6 up the middle, at least back in my day, and we were at the time the only team doing the 1 up the middle. And I had players from other teams treating us like we were just trying to be like difficult stepchildren. Like when we came up with that system, it went back to the Blaze when we had a two spotter system for the first time. And it's just we didn't know what other teams were doing. There weren't a lot of other teams doing 2 spotters at that time. And we just went with I wasn't even in the mix at that point. I mean, the Blaze went with what worked, and we carried it over to the Dogs. But I had players that would treat us like we were intentionally, like if our parents were Republican, we registered Democrat just to be difficult. And it was never anything stupid like that. It's just what we did. And I don't understand why it meant something to anybody that we should change it. Why does everybody got to do the same thing? I said in my first show, there's more than one way to get to heaven. And how you do your spotting, that's up to you. Don't let some outsider join your team unless it's somebody you've turned the coaching reins over and said, you know what we're doing is not working, man. You redo everything. Then shut up and let them do it. But, man, when you bring somebody into your group that played on a team that did things different. When I went and played with Oklahoma, I just got on the team. I'd been an all-star. I'd won championships. I've been on the best defenses around. I didn't go over there telling them how to run their defense. I didn't tell them where to play me. They gave me a spot, and I just took it and went and tried to earn my team. I never gave them my opinion on what they should be doing. I fortunately got to play most of the tournament up front because they had who I call Benny Legend, Hall of Famer Benny Myers, playing up front for them. And Benny and I were supposed to really split time up front, but that's when Benny's hearing loss started kicking in, so I ended up taking over up front. So I ended up playing more or less the way I would have played on the Dogs. But if they put me in deep right field or in center, you know what I mean, I wouldn't have said, man, that that's, you don't know what you're doing. I would have gone out and taken my spot, and I would have played. And when you go to a team, you need the team a lot of times more than they need you. I guess that's not always true. Teams need players. I know that, especially if it's a good player. But if that team has an established way of the way they're doing it, man, let them do it. Let them get good at what they're doing. If you want to play for them, you adjust. And I don't care if you're a spotter or a player, because we didn't do like the squeak calls and drag calls, but we had a spotter come on who spent their career doing squeak calls and whatever. And even though we didn't want it, we we had to put up with it. You know what I mean? They didn't care what our system was. You know what I mean? They wanted to do things the way they had always done it. And of course, that spotter didn't last very long with us. But, you know, I mean, I feel very strongly that teams got to pick what they're going to do. Sit down together and decide why you're going to do it. Pick the best route for you to go.
Understand why Eric played at 95 feet or 90 feet in dead three because he's the best player, and that's where most of the balls are going to go. Right. You know, it's a very clear correlation.
We had a good starting point. You need to have a starting point.
Exactly.
And you can't let players just play wherever because they say that's where they should play, man. If they're not helping your team there, you know, you got to move players where they're best going to help you. You know, that's going to be up to each individual team, but you can't let the players just say, well, I'm going to play here and that be the end of it. You know, player got to earn a spot. I mean, I was able to play up front.
Play, spotter, spot, coach is coach. That's what you do. You play. Right. You know.
I mean, it wasn't easy for the Dogs when you got athletes like Roger and Danny Fabiano and Mike. You know what I mean? It's like it's hard to decide where to put. You know what I mean? You got good athletes. It's hard to put. The best athletes can't all play the same spot. You know what I mean?
And I dealt with that. I mean, I dealt with it on a far larger scale than you did because you were just there for 1 year, right? I switched to the Heat, and the Heat was completely opposite of the Dogs, right? The Heat was an offensive team,
right?
They didn't have to develop the same sort of defense that we had to develop because, you know, they had one of the greatest pitchers of all time, right? But you know, even in my first year, I still was bitter towards the Dogs at that point, so I tried not to mention their name. But I want, you know, at that first year, it's like, man, okay, let's just roll with stuff. And as I saw I was going to play with this team more, it's like, man, you know what? As I built up credibility with the people on the team and became more accepted by the people on the team and the coaching staff and all that, it's like, hey, you know, here are some ideas that might work for you. It might, you know, you can take them or not, but you know, these are some ideas that might work with you. I'm here with you regardless, whatever you choose. but here's something that might help. So
I don't know about you, but it's a proud moment for me to kind of earn that credibility with a new group. Like when you see, you know, like you have evidence that you've earned that credibility, you know.
All right.
You know, if I were to talk about myself as a player, I would consider myself like my strength more like from the leadership role, I think, than like, you know, I feel like I was a better than average player, but I wasn't a great player. I know that, but I do feel like I was a much better than average like leader for the team. I don't know if you playing for me would agree with that, but you know that's why.
I would more disagree with the fact that you're not a great player. You played your spot to the utmost, right?
Well, I mean, I tried to, but I just you know, I don't think I set the world on fire doing it or whatever.
I mean, you handled all. I mean, it wasn't like, man, we got to get this fool out of here. You were playing at a high level, right?
I appreciate
we were competing for championships.
I appreciate
and all
that. But I guess where I was going to tie into what you were talking about with your experience with the Heat, when I went and played with Oklahoma, that team just was loaded with vets that had been around the league forever. Dan Green, Fort Worth wasn't around anymore, and they had Sam McKenzie and Scooter. I can't remember Scott's last name. I'm sorry about that, but Roy Eubanks was on that team. Frank Fazio, you know what I mean? That was a veteran team right there. Benny Legend, and right before the tournament, I guess it was their practice to elect a new captain before the start of each tournament. And before the tournament started, the team elected Sam McKenzie to be our captain, which, you know, I'd been around. I've played against Sam forever. I was supportive of that. I love me some Sammy Mack. On the first, there was a young kid on it.
Sam McKenzie of the answer, have you been blind your whole life? Not yet.
Yeah, that was so great. I was having I was having breakfast with Sam, Roy Eubanks, and Frank Fazio. And Frank's like, so, Sam, you been blind your whole life? And Sam's like, not yet. So, that was a great line. Even though I didn't lose my sight till I was 11, when people ask me if I've been blind my whole life, I steal that answer. It doesn't even fit me, but it's such a great answer. It always makes people laugh. But
I digress you again.
Yeah, it's all good. So, and we're going to dive into our last section here in a minute. People getting laid on the East Coast. So we had a young player on the Oklahoma team that year who was playing in his first World Series. He had played in the Oklahoma regional tournament that used to be an annual thing back then. But he hadn't played at the World Series. His name was Matt, and he was our designated hitter, real fast runner, and he was missing bases left and right on the first day of the tournament. And on the next day before our first game, honestly, it's one of like my prouder moments in Beepball. Sam came over to me and was like, man, Neil, will you pull this kid aside and talk to him and try to, get his head straight or whatever. And I did, and he didn't miss any more bases for the rest of the tournament. But you know what I mean? That credibility when the captain of the team comes over and says, hey, man, will you do my job? Well, I don't know, I shouldn't put it like that. I'd sound like I'm dogging Sam, but I mean, I took that as a huge compliment when the captain of the team comes over and is like, man, I need you to straighten this kid out, so. The credibility thing, man. When you earn it on I don't believe it should be given on another team. It should be earned.
All right, no, I agree with that.
So I just want to.
One more thing. I do have a spotting tip for the spotters.
Sure.
All right, and this is something that I thought of long ago and instituted it with the dogs, and the spotters hated it. But I think it's perfect. When you are doing batting practice, have your spotters spot. Send your spotters out to the field. Don't tell them just to shag. Tell them to spot as if they are in a real game. It will be the best live act. There's no difference between spotting at batting practice and spotting at a game. There is no difference. So I swear by it. Have your spotters go out, line up where they're going to be, and spot for every batting practice.
Dude, I forgot to add. It's so funny you said that because one, I forgot to add that to my notes. But two, when you started to talk about it, I was like, oh yeah, I had one more thing about spotting. I was going to say, I had no idea you were going to say the same thing. But man, three, I don't know what you remember, but that was another area where Chris and Mark we're not going to do that. That's stupid.
They were as resistant to that as anybody could be.
Yes, they were just as resistant to that as they were the playbooks. And
yes.
that's honestly, man, I love those guys, but that's unacceptable behavior. That the way they put down our playbooks and walked out of the room, we didn't even know they left the room. I love those guys, but man, both of those things, like putting up such a front, and you're I wanted to talk about this too because teams are in kind of a different. I hope that.
8 viewers.
Oh, we got 8 viewers right now. Hey, people.
Hi, 8 viewers.
I'm sorry about that. I guess.
Hi, Aunt Cindy. I hope you're enjoying. My aunt lets us see her show all the time.
I have no idea anything you're talking about. So.
But my Aunt Cindy listens to your show all.
No way.
Yeah.
Dude, when you were like, hi, Aunt Cindy.
When I said, hi, Aunt Cindy.
Dude, I know. When you were saying, hi, Aunt Cindy, I was like, oh, that reminds me of your mom's sister. But I didn't think you were talking to your real Aunt Cindy. I didn't know she's in Beepball Nation.
Yeah, I hooked her up last year during the tournament. So she could follow and watch the games.
I love me some Aunt Cindy, man. I became buddies with her.
Totally enthralled with Beepball Nation.
Oh, that's awesome. That's way awesome. So that's cool. Hey, Aunt Cindy, I miss you. She was my buddy when I was around her. I liked Aunt Cindy. Still like Aunt Cindy.
All right. Well, there you go.
So look,
you're
it goes back to like the communication thing. It's like, man, every team's in a tough spot with pitchers and spotters. They say, no, we're not going to do that unless they stink at their job. You're not going to fire them. You know what I mean? And Mark and Chris, they gave a ton to our team. I don't want to make it sound like without Mark Masterson, we couldn't have practiced as much as we practiced. He had that big old van. And between me and you, Eric, Mike, like by the time Mike moved to Petaluma, we were spread out over like 120-mile radius or something crazy. So it was hard for us to get just our core group together, and we couldn't have done it as much as we did without Mark Masterson. So I don't want to make it sound like they were always just a pain in the backside.
And Chris Hunsaker was our coach for our first
year. Yeah, I mean, he became our head coach and was the coach when we won our first 3 championships. So.
But yeah, no, totally. They were all the innovations. We had to force it on them. Yeah. But once we forced it on them, they accepted it, they ran with it, and they learned from it, and it was great.
So it all worked out. My request to spotters and pitchers, all the sighted volunteers, man, don't flex that control so much when a team's trying to get you to go out of your comfort zone. But same thing with the players. I've been around just as many hard-headed players. You know what I mean? It's like, well, I'm blind. It's a blind sport. We're doing it my way. And that's just as unacceptable. That's every bit as unacceptable.
For the Heat, I played right field for an entire tournament with the same spotter, okay? A new spotter, right? And I'm encouraging, you know what I'm saying? I'm coaching like I would do, you know what I mean? For a young new spotter. I get pulled in a game and replaced with another player. Within the inning, they have had a conflict and the spotter has quit and walked off the field or whatever. So players need not to be hard-headed as well. Seriously. So.
Absolutely. No, it's a players and spotters thing, and players and coaches. Like the whole team's got to be on the same page if you want to win. Bottom line, if you want to win, the second people start going their own directions, your foundation's breaking apart. It's that simple.
Agree with that.
So let's finish up with just some defensive drills we can give people, both to do in a practice as a team or to do on your own. And the number one thing we're going to talk about is what we call Law of the Jungle. Now, you may hear the San Antonio Jets saying Law of the Jungle in their games. That is not a San Antonio Jets thing. That is 100% a practice taken from the Dogs.
Yeah.
It actually goes back to when we were the Blaze. And Kimmy and Slick Watts, who are Hall of Fame level players from especially from the California history, but even at the NBBA level, they are 2 of the core players from the East Bay Blaze. They the first year of the Blaze they were both all-stars on a team that went to the 1986 championship game in their first year ever as a team. But Kimmy is the one that came up, and we would call it Kimmy's Law, to where what we would do when we were practicing defense is we would start out with the 18 outs. You make a put out, it goes down to 17. You make a bad play and they score a run, it goes back up to 18. Or if that's your first play, it goes up to 19. And you just got to keep playing until you work that down all the way to 0. Now, Kimmy didn't come on to the Dogs with us. And we didn't necessarily all part. Everything's fine now, but we didn't necessarily all part on great terms. So we hated calling it Kimmy's Law. And we came up with a new
call it Kimmy's Law. No.
Yeah. So that's when it became Law of the Jungle. So we didn't just do that once in a while. That was every West Coast Dawgs practice, whether we had 2 players, whether we had 1 player, whether we had 6 on the field. We would do 18 outs. Come in, get some water, sometimes do some hitting, go right back. We would always do at least like 3 rounds of Law of the Jungle. And sometimes it was 106 and we were on bad fields and we weren't making plays and it didn't matter. There was only one practice I ever remember when Don just said, enough. You guys don't have it today. And we were playing on a really bad field.
In the heat, in the Sacramento Heat in the 100-degree heat. It was, I remember that day. That was like, and in the end, right, we were all crushed. Right? It's like, really? We can't.
Yeah, we couldn't believe it.
We can't finish a round of law and jungle, and it's so important to do this, and because the Dogs we didn't play any regional games. By the time the Dogs really got rolling, there was no real league here.
Yeah.
And we never went to regional tournaments. So
and not for the arrogant reasons that people kind of state. People that never played with us, like, they never thought they needed to go to a tournament. We couldn't afford to go to a tournament. Yeah, right. We didn't have sponsorship. Every one of us paid like $500 just to go to the World Series, like for airfare, because we were coming from California. We couldn't afford to go. Even when we tried to go to regional tournaments, we never could get more than like 6 people there. It's like, why are we going to go play 6 games? I mean, yeah, you could say you love the game and go do it, but we wouldn't learn anything from, going and playing 6 games with only 6 players.
Last year or 2 years ago when I went to that regional tournament in College Station, I was like, man, I've been playing Beepball for 30 years. It's the first regional tournament I've ever been to. But we didn't need to because we have Law of the Jungle. And like I heard San Antonio saying Law of the Jungle and that nonsense and stuff, and it's not like ingrained in them because what you didn't hear was the countdown, right? If people remember playing the Dogs, sometimes you would hear us say, play 16, play 14, but it's because the games, to win a Beepball game, you have to record 18 outs. That's where we got the 18 outs from. And so it taught us to think in terms of recording on our own without strikeouts, 18 out, right? And like Neil said, at times you would, when you started missing balls and it would go up, it would be deflating. Right, you work for 20 minutes to bring the countdown from 18 to 7, and then in the next 5 plays you go back up to 12. It messes with your mental, your mental state. Right. But doing that constantly, all the time, it just taught us to think in those terms. 18 outs. Every game we need on defense to play 18 outs. And that's how we stepped out onto every field. Play 18. Play 18. Play 18. And so when I didn't hear anything like that stuff from the Jets, I was like, man, you guys can't even change the name or anything? Come on. Poor Excel. I'm sorry.
Straight thievery.
I'm still a player, so I still got these,
Beepball's a copycat league, though, and honestly, I was always disappointed because coming up in Beepball, every pitcher tried to emulate the great pitchers. Everybody wanted to follow, you know what I mean? Albuquerque had a great pitcher and a great offense, so people wanted to be like them. And then Austin, Fort Worth, whatever. But nobody, when we became the best defensive team, nobody was trying to figure out what we did. They weren't asking us anything. They weren't trying to copy us. It was like we just stumbled into being a great defense and nobody cared why, really. So I actually...
And it's funny just because, and again, going to the Heat, right, I got to be on another team and listen to what people say, all right, from the inside. And one of the things they said is you couldn't play like the Dogs play because you didn't have the talent to play the defense the Dogs had, or the talent to play the style of defense we played. And I just laughed. It's like, man, do you see what the Thunder does? You see the talent on the Thunder? If you don't have the talent to play the Thunder's defense, you can't play the Thunder's defense.
Right.
So why is it okay to follow them, but us, no?
Yeah, I wouldn't even agree. I wouldn't even...
We know why. We were hated. Dogs were the most hated team in Beepball.
Well, we earned that by being the most cocky team in Beepball. So I don't want to make it sound like we were victims.
No. We were cocky. We loved it, right? We loved it, but no, we loved it. That was our what we that was our mentality that we decided that we were going to have.
Right.
You know that, right? That's what the image we wanted.
Right.
People
No,
hated us for
absolutely.
it.
I was proud of it at the time. Some of the stuff I look back now, no, we were over the top. I could see that. But nevertheless, I was proud of being the team we were, like as cocky as we were. I took the field with my chest stuck out every time. No, and if we got beat, I was ready to come after you the next time we played you. So I love that attitude. But we're getting way off track.
Yeah.
You know, going back to the Law of the Jungle thing. An area where we also became where we took responsibility of it because we both earned good marks as a group, and we took punishment as a group. One thing that Don started doing over time is when we were playing Law of the Jungle, if you made Don was big on the hustle plays. I've talked some about hustle plays before on the show. That's why I think those get up things that Mike turned us on to. That was great exercise for hustle plays. But if you made a hustle play, like a play that in most games could have been a run and you somehow turned it into an out, Don would shave off 2, drop from like 14 down to 12 on Law of the Jungle. But if you also made a bonehead play, if you didn't make a good effort, if you, crawled to a ball rather than getting up and running after that ball that bounced off you, he would add 2. So, and, if one player had a really bad practice, it would punish the whole team. So it forced us to both take punishment and praise, like as a group. You know what I mean? As a team effort. Nobody ever got. I mean, like if I was the one that added 2 off a bonehead play, you guys would get on me, but it wouldn't take away from our focus. We never got mad. Nobody ever wanted to walk off the field.
It was the trash talking thing,
Right? Yeah.
Like, we got one out. Who wants it? Eric.
Right.
I always yell, Eric. Who wants it? Eric. Oh.
Yeah, hit it to Eric. We want to go home.
Who wants it, Eric?
Right.
The other thing that we were able to do with that, or Don was able to do with that, or anybody, is because it wasn't only if the person making a bad play or making the play made a bad play. Somebody might make a fine play, but if their backup did not get in the line, if their backup was being lazy and not doing what they were doing, Don would say, you know what? Seth wasn't doing Seth wasn't there, no out, right? He didn't give us the out. So it was a constant way to shape our behavior on the field. We all had to hustle. We all had to get to our spots every time, because if we didn't, somebody might miss a ball, and next thing you know, we're back up at 20, or B, somebody might make a great play, and you might get it wiped off because you weren't doing what you were supposed to do. Right. So I'll say it again, if anybody wants to be a great defensive beepball team, play Law of the Jungle over and over and over and over and over.
And play it with honesty. Play it with honesty.
I realize, though, that is kind of hard. Like, the Heat has like a 2-hour practice window. And so, where we were kind of lucky when we would practice, a lot of our practices started to come on the weekends and Saturdays. So at times, if we needed to extend our practice, we could extend our practice. Right. Where,
not even needed to. I mean, we were always out there.
Right. Don didn't have to let us off the field.
Right.
We could just keep going. So it might be hard for some people to be as rigid with it as we were, but if you can be rigid with Law of the Jungle and use it as a tool, your team will be far better than it would be without it.
In the end, I don't ever remember us having like a closing time. I mean, practice was over when Don...
Go back out.
My brother keeps calling. I'm thinking something might be going on with my family, so I'm gonna. We need to finish this up.
Okay. Well,
I need to see what's going on. We've gone on for quite a while anyway, so really the only thing left is just throwing in some variations of the Law of the Jungle that we did. One of those variations that would get thrown at us from time to time is we had to field the ball. And usually when we did these variations, we would only do 9 outs because this was more of a fundamental practice. But so we would usually just do these things like in 9-out increments. But we had variations where we had to field every single ball from the chest up. Anything that hit you below the waist would not count. So it's good to do that also. It forces people to focus more. Also, we would do variations where you could only use your hands. Couldn't even let the ball hit your body. You had to get on the ground in front of the ball and reach out and grab the ball before it hit your body. And again, it's just like an ear practice or whatever. It's not like he would tell us we had... Hello? Yeah, I think somebody's knocking at my door now. This is crazy. I don't know. I hope
your brother's at your door.
He might be. I don't know what's going on. I don't even know if I heard that right. I heard something outside. It sounded like somebody at my door. It wasn't my doorbell. So there's that variation. And then a last thing, and we started doing this after you left the Dogs while you were playing with Houston. But I think it's real valuable. You could do that. All these things you could do on your own or on an individual practice or with a team. But we would get in a big circle. And Don would stand in the middle and throw pop-ups up in the air. And the player that was going to be closest to the ball had to both call the ball. You know what I mean? You had to say my ball, whatever, to call whoever around you. And then field, it. And then it was also a good way to practice fielding.
Pop-ups.
Yeah, pop-ups. So there is somebody at my door. Who is it? All right. So will you finish up for a minute?
Facebook Live.
Finish up.
This is live. The cops have approached Neil's door.
Because I'm doing a show right now.
Oh, so I'm here in California. Breaking news. Neil has received a COVID check at the door. We are waiting for him to resume.
Something serious going on.
He is talking. Perhaps, a neighbor has come over. Perhaps somebody has lost their cat. Perhaps somebody is in need of food or something. In these times, who knows what's at the door. I didn't actually realize though that I'd be doing this on my own here for so long. But one other thing that Don did do with the Law of the Jungle that he always focused on in our 18 outs is he focused on the last 4 outs. Right? We the last out of the 5th inning and all the outs of the 6th inning. Once we got to that space, right? Those last 4 outs, everything tightened up. Right there, you needed to make a good play. It was no more of those like recovery plays and stuff like that. It needed to be clean. Else, we would just go back to 4 outs. Right? You get down to 1. You work 4, 3, 2. You miss that last one. You go back up to 4. 4, 3. You miss it. Go back up to 4. So
I started to point that out when we were talking about Law of the Jungle. It's like when we got down to the last 4 or 5 outs, Don would always make a point of like, all right, now I expect a higher level out of you. This is when it counts the most. This is the hardest time to field the ball. This is when your nerves are at the highest, and I need you to be at your highest level of focus. Like that. Those last 4 outs were key to every round of Law of the Jungle. You want to know what the family emergency is?
What?
It's real heavy.
What?
Toilet paper. I just got a package of toilet paper delivered. I got 4 rolls. I'm a hoarder.
Yeah, I was telling the people while you were gone that was probably some COVID check to see, And next thing you know, I was thinking it was the police or something like that. Instead, it was a care package.
Right.
Help the blind. Help me, I'm blind. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, honestly, I am very sorry to everybody for the interruptions. I don't know if I need to put my phone in like airplane mode so that people can't call. Nobody's called before while I was doing the show, so it hasn't been a problem.
Everybody's learning on the fly.
Just one more thing that I got to be working on.
Yeah, right.
Seth Dog, man, I think we killed it. I mean, you know what I mean? I don't know if everybody will agree with us, but I think we we packed this show full of ideas. I don't know if we
Yeah,
can
right.
listen to.
I don't know if anybody will take them. I don't know if anybody will take them, but we tried, Neil. That's all you can do, man.
And again, I realize there are players and coaches out there going, man, our idea is better. And I'm open to that. If you want to come on the show and lay out a whole nother theory, like, in the end, there's going to be a team out there that's going to listen to you. There's a team that probably listened to us, and you know what I mean? Everybody's looking for something different, and I want to throw out all the possibilities if we can. Looks like we might have a little time to do so.
If John Parker's listening, he's probably like fuming about how I described this defense. So, people can disagree with my interpretation and lay it out to put more of a clear understanding. I could be wrong. It's happened.
I got to ask you before we part. Have you been addressing like the 5% that have a chance of winning a championship, or the entire NBBA?
I've been addressing the entire NBA because I'm hoping with people changing their tactics that 5% will grow. But if nobody changes their tactics, then especially now with teams not being able to practice them.
Right.
But yeah, no.
But at the same time, like some of these drills that we finished up with, for one, that's a good. These are all things that you can go like every practice. I mostly practice with Mark Masterson because he lives close to me. So he would, during the summer, he would always come out and hit balls to me for one-on-one practices, and we did the same thing. Like I would play rounds of 6 or 9. I'd do like 6 or 9 outs, take a break. Do 6 or 9 outs, take a break, and finish up the day eventually by running like 5 or 10 sprints, and so that these are all things that you players can be doing while your team can't practice. In addition to that, you guys can be having conference call meetings, however, whatever platform you want to do it on, and talk about all these things. Have a plan before you're able to get back out on the field of what you're going to do and how you're going to attack it.
Right. Yeah.
Perfect time for all this stuff. That's where I got the idea for this show. There's no better time right now than to kind of merge our minds and see what works for everybody.
All right.
So thanks, Seth. I appreciate you spending a Sunday evening with me. Hopefully we get to do some many more.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know me. I'm always here, Devil Dog. Always here. Especially in the COVID shutdown. I was supposed to be coaching two flag football games today.
Oh, no.
So sad, so sad.
I was supposed to be doing a beep kickball, and both, I guess, talking about beep kickball and beep baseball. I find when I'm talking, like, doing kickball and beepball, I used to, for years, I hated that the league was called, like when I first came in the league in 86, 87, I hated that it was the National Beep Baseball Association because we all called it Beepball. You know what I mean? It's like, it should just reflect Beepball. But now that there's Beep Kickball, it's like if, what do we go call kickball? You know what I mean? That would be beepball too. Those balls beep also. So I've really turned the corner on, with the possibilities of making more beeping type balls that, you know what I mean? You got to call it beep something or there's no way. I found when I've been talking to kids, and that's what I was supposed to be doing this week, going out again and talking to kids and showing them how to play, letting them play beep kickball. I found when I was talking to them and I would go back and forth between the kickball and beepball, I kept saying beepball and then I'd say kickball. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, this is too confusing. I got to say beep baseball and beep kickball because...
well, you're messing it up from the get-go. We all know that it's beeper ball.
Oh.
Beeper ball, Neil.
Or as the book was titled, just beep.
Yeah.
I play beep, beep. All right. I think we've done enough damage, man. For those of you that have listened, thank you. I hope you're enjoying the show. I hope you enjoyed this one. I did. Got things in the work for next week, but I can't say what it is because I haven't got confirmation. But I can confirm if I'm alive, I'll be here. So I hope that you all have a safe, healthy week. Make smart decisions for yourself. And we'll be back talking some beepball next week. Thanks again, Seth Dog.
Thank you, Neil Dog. Bye-bye.
9 viewers. Comment
9
section.
viewers.
Justin Romack is
We picked one up.
comment. Finish. Button.
All right, bye-bye, everybody.